Hello, welcome to Microsoft Ignite here in Chicago. My name is Matt McSpirit, technical evangelist for all things in the data center. And today, we're kindly joined by Srini, who's a director of program management in the hybrid storage and data protection group. That's an extremely long title. And also Chris Palmer, who's a solution architect at PCL Construction. Welcome, guys. I've got a load of questions for both of you. But Srini, I'd like to start with you first.
Sure.
I'm hearing more and more about, particularly as I'm around the booths, about something called availability on demand. And it must be getting popular because I already have a sticker on my laptop, and you'll see I only have 3 stickers so far, so we're talking popularity here. So for people who don't know what availability on demand is all about, bring us up to speed. What does it make, what makes it up?
Sure, Matt. Availability on demand is a suite of Azure services that allows a customer to very quickly and easily extend and protect the data center and IT assets up with Azure.
Okay.
So to be more specific, some of the common scenarios that people want to use private clouds for are things like disaster recovery, migration, backup, long-term retention, dev test, cloud bursting. All of these are scenarios that the availability on demand suite allows the customer to do very, very easily using a consistent set of tools that they can use.
So these are pre-configured, pre-available services in Azure that I, as a consumer, can just consume and integrate with my existing on-premises.
That's absolutely right.
Okay,
yes.
So you mentioned quite a few different scenarios there. Go through some of the core ones, like site recovery and backup. Just give us the 10,000-foot view of some of those in a bit more depth.
Sure. Let's talk about the business continuity scenarios, both data availability and application availability. So these are some things that customers do think of the public cloud as sort of an enabling mechanism for them to easily adopt. So Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup plus DPM are the tool sets that we have as part of availability on demand for customers to very easily protect their applications and protect the data so they're available when you want them, where you want them, very, very easily. So that's really what it's all about.
Okay, so Data Protection Manager being DPM on premises.
That's correct.
Okay, so that gives us a little bit of info on some of those solutions, but let's drill into, in this particular session, a little bit more depth into backup specifically.
Sure.
So let's start on-prem, which is where a lot of people start, I'm guessing. Tell us a little bit more about what's going on with DPM. I know there's a lot of talk about the technical preview too, and lots of stuff going on around new technology and preview. Tell us about DPM. Bring us up to speed for people who perhaps haven't kept up. What's new? What's cool?
So DPM is an on-premises backup software. It's been around for almost 10 years now. And we've been innovating very, very rapidly in DPM over the last several months. We've brought a lot of new features and functionality, like support for more recent versions of our workloads, for support for long-term retention on Azure. We've essentially taken DPM and tied it to Azure Backup.
Okay.
Right? So when we talk about backup, it's no longer about what you can do on premises versus what you can do on Azure, and sort of different tools to do that. It's really one product, one solution that allows you to protect your data, be it on premises or on Azure, and you can choose to protect it wherever you want to.
Okay.
And you can set policies, for instance, of saying, hey, I want to keep it on premises for 7 days or 15 days or 30 days, and then I want to tier it to the cloud and hold it for the next 21 years.
Okay, so that's interesting. You mentioned long-term retention there, because a couple of months back, the retention period was a little bit shorter than that. So explain to us now what the limits, I suppose, of long-term retention are for people.
We are removing the limits.
Oh, right,
so
okay.
Today you can
Unlimited.
today you can go to 99 years.
Right.
Right? And that's sufficient for most people, I think.
Okay, cool. So you talked about integrating DPM with Azure Backup. What about organizations who perhaps are a little bit smaller? They don't perhaps have an investment in System Center. Are they applicable to start to use Azure Backup as well?
Yes, Azure Backup works in a couple of different scenarios. One, certainly it works with DPM to give you a full solution. You can use Azure Backup if you're a small customer, an SMB customer, or mid-market customer. So we actually get away from potentially local storage. So you hook up to Azure, and you identify the set of assets that you want to protect to Azure, and the data and backup goes to Azure, and they can be retained as long as you want. So all of the capabilities of Azure Backup are still available, and you don't have to have any storage on premises for your backup.
Okay.
Customers also like this capability in the branch offices. Right? Customers who have a number of different branch offices, PCL is a great example. I'm sure Chris will talk more about that. Can use the same Azure Backup for exactly the same scenario.
Okay, yeah, we'll come to Chris shortly and talk about that. In the meantime, if we think about DPM, we think about some of the innovation that it brings to on-premises workloads, protecting Hyper-V virtual machines, protecting SQL SharePoint Exchange, and so on. What if I'm an organization who has made that jump, and I'm now running key workloads that are important to me in Azure VMs, in IaaS? is there a backup capability that I can take advantage of there? Is this a different service? Do I install DPM as a VM up there? Tell me about that. What are my options if I embrace the cloud?
Great question. We recently announced IaaS VM Backup on Azure. It's a feature of Azure Backup.
Okay.
So if you're running IaaS VMs on backup on Azure, you can back them up using Azure Backup just as you would do it with an on-premises VM.
Okay, so
as simple as that.
So to clarify, I don't need to necessarily create VMs that will be my backup VMs to back up my other IaaS VMs. It's a service that I choose from the portal, very straightforward, and tick, 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 and I can then start protecting those workloads as well.
Exactly. No software installed, no additional licenses to deal with, right? It's a scalable, highly available service on Azure. You just pick the VM you want to protect, set the policy, and boom, it goes.
Okay, and that's the same portal and UI experience as if I was protecting on-premises resources as well. So I could essentially have both resources, IaaS and on-prem, come into this single place.
Yes.
Okay,
our vision is one pane of management for protecting all your assets. It doesn't matter where they live and where you're protecting it to.
Okay.
One pane of management.
So there was announcements made in the keynote as well around this new operations management suite. Is there any relation between that and the backup capabilities that we've been talking about in Azure Backup?
Yes, Azure Backup and Azure Site Recovery are two key services in the operations management suite.
Right.
So when that comes out, we will be part of the suite as well.
Okay, so customers will still be able to individually take the services and then go to Ops Manager Suite if they want to as well.
Yes.
Okay, that's good flexibility. Now, I'd like to bring Chris in. Welcome again. Thanks for joining us. You're a solution architect from PCL Construction.
Yes, I am.
So definitely not an IT company.
Not at all.
Tell us a little bit about PCL as an organization and what you do, and for people who don't know, and about your infrastructure as well. So start with telling us a bit about PCL.
Sure. PCL Construction is the largest construction company in Canada. I believe we're the 5th largest in the United States. And we work primarily in North America, but we also have business in Australia and the Caribbean. And as a general contractor, we have at any one time 180 to 200 remote job sites or remote sites that are large enough to require some sort of server infrastructure. We have significantly more projects and more sites than just that, but those are the ones that we actually have to put gear out there where we're going to have people working on local systems, backing up, saving their files to the servers, and then ultimately we have to back that up, both the applications and the files that they have out there.
Okay, are these sites temporary in nature for the period of the construction job, and then you fold everything away and move on, or do they stay once construction is completed? Yeah,
that's exactly what it is. So we have about anywhere from 30 to 50 permanent office locations at any one time. And that number does kind of vary because depending on, we have mod yards and fab shops and those sorts of things. And then we have district offices, or what we would call district offices, so the regional offices that control and manage the business in that area. And then we have the construction sites themselves. So for example, if we have a regional office in Los Angeles, all the, it controls all the construction sites in the Los Angeles greater area, for example.
So are you using backup technology to protect from a central site, pulling in the data from those remote sites, or are you protecting at the remote site itself? Tell us a bit about what's going on at a remote site and what's being protected as well.
Yeah, it's a good question. If we actually look at where PCL came from historically, we've actually been a DPM customer now for about 2.5 years. And we started at our district offices, so those permanent office locations.
Yeah.
We were originally backing up the data by collecting it with DFSR back to our central data center, and then we would then back it up to tape using a different product.
Right.
We eventually grew beyond what DFSR was able to kind of keep up with. When we had replication issues, it could take quite a while for it to get back in sync, especially if we had server failures.
Yeah.
DPM was a much more consistent product, so we put a DPM server there, DPM server in our data center, and did the more classic or traditional DPM to DPM backup.
Yep.
We were using a different cloud-based backup product at our job sites. And what came back is our field service group said, listen guys, the cost is becoming untenable. We've got to find something better. And this was after we already moved away from tape. So we already had the cost benefit of going to a cloud solution. It was still just scaling much higher than we were anticipating because the data growth was so high. And then, so we had that. And then the other thing that we had was a need for us being able to handle our retention requirements.
Right.
And so it was like, how are we gonna deal with this? What can we do to bring better value to the business? ultimately what ended up happening was the merging of DPM with Azure Backup. And so we were able to basically run a pilot and test DPM going with offsite backup to Azure without having to come back to our data center at our job sites. And It was so successful that it is now the standard that we have for all of our job sites going forward. And in September, we went full production with every new construction site having DPM going to Azure Backup. And I believe as of last week, we're at 68 deployments of DPM. And by the end of the next year or two, we'll have about 200.
Wow. That's cool. So walk us through. You've got a new construction project that's been outlined in Los Angeles, let's say, as another example.
Yep.
The infrastructure gets rolled out there with DPM as part of that.
That's right.
Core standard. What else is in that infrastructure? What else needs to be protected? What data?
So a typical job site is going to have, at a minimum, a DPM server now, usually a job site server. Depending on its size, it can have a separate dedicated domain controller, and then there's a SQL server.
Right, okay.
And so the workloads that we're protecting is obviously all the file data, the SQL data, and then we're taking local backups of each of the system state of each of those individual servers
and
themselves.
These are all physical servers as well. They're not virtual machines or anything.
No, it's actually a mix. So traditionally, yeah, we were all physical, but in the last 6 months or so, I believe all of our deployments have started going as Hyper-V.
All right, cool, excellent. That's good, because that's another great workload to protect quickly with DPM. You capture it from the outside at the VM. You can also target inside at the workload.
Absolutely.
SQL Server is a good example. So what kind of data requirements do you have for protection? I mean, how much are we talking data at a typical site? Is it terabytes or petabytes or?
The average, the average job site right now is about 600 gig to a terabyte. Our district offices, our permanent office locations, they're much larger. They have a much higher rate of change. So our average there is about 2.5 terabytes. Some of our larger sites are closer to 10 terabytes. And that's where I've been working with the DPM team to really drive the limits on what we can put up into Azure in order for us to get all that data as much as we can out of our data center and off of our tape and up into the cloud.
So we were talking about retention policies before and long-term retention, and you've called it out as well. Was the initial 128 recovery points, was that not enough for you at that time?
No, not at all. And that's actually why, from a cloud perspective, we started at our job sites. We didn't have the type of retention requirements at our job sites, but at our district offices, our retention period is 35 years.
Right.
And that's just a bear. I mean, that's really challenging for us to deal with, right? When the long-term retention became available as an option, we immediately started looking to see how can we leverage this at our district offices. And so we started an upgrade right away of all those existing DPM servers to 2012 R2. We got them hooked into Azure and we got them pre-seeded. And that's where we started taking advantage of some of the new features that are available today. So for example, the import-export, the ability for us to take a backup with DPM, put it onto a USB drive and ship it to an Azure data center instead of having all terabytes of data go pre-seeded over the wire. Huge savings there. Excellent.
That's another example of key functionality that's enabling you to embrace without having to send a huge amount of data up in one push. So it's very, very flexible.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned a few features that you're now taking advantage of, but is there anything you've seen here or perhaps you know about coming in the TP2, in technical preview, that you're planning to use in the future, or any other areas around the backup and recovery?
The one in particular that I know we're going to be doing a pilot on is the Azure Site Recovery. Okay. And so being able to take a replica of that job site server in Azure itself. The scenario that we have there is today we only have a couple of locations where we can build and provision servers and then ship it out. And so if we have a failure, just because of the time that it takes to restore the data, build the server, ship it, do all those sorts of things, it can take a couple of days. And so I see some value in being able to have a replica that we can then fail over to in the event of a server failure and provide access to that data in some fashion. So at least, today we restore it out of Azure and get it back, but we can actually just give it to them directly if we had a site-wide failure. And I think there's some big wins there.
Do you think there's opportunity as well in the future to perhaps go completely nothing on the job site and perhaps run IaaS VMs? Is that something that you would ever consider, or?
It's a possibility. we're very progressive at PCL with respect to the cloud.
Yeah.
And so the mandate is cloud first, so long as it strategically makes sense, and
Yeah.
obviously financially makes sense as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, in that model, if we could serve our business needs, absolutely, we would consider it.
And you've got the experience with Azure Backup and DPM that your transition to putting VMs in Azure and standing them up very quickly for those sites, you could protect them very quickly as well because of that experience you've gained today.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right, well, thank you very much for some insight into your infrastructure. Srini, this week there's a lot of sessions on a lot of stuff, some availability on demand, as we've seen with the sticker. If people want to learn more about DPM and about Azure Backup and availability on demand, should they check out the Channel 9 for the sessions that have been on this week? Is there other resources that you can recommend as well?
Absolutely. Certainly going to the various sessions that are happening this week are one source of information. They could go to azure.com, portal.azure.com, and look at the Azure Backup page as well as the Azure Site Recovery page. We also have an availability on demand page
Right.
on Azure that gives us all the information that they need to get started.
There are multiple sources. And
Yep.
as you know already, all of the sessions are captured, so you'll be in good shape to watch those on demand when you see fit. But that's all we've got time for. So thanks to the guys for joining us today. It's been very insightful to learn a little bit more about availability on demand and also the backup technologies as well, more specifically. Thanks to you for joining us as well, and we hope to see you again soon on another Channel 9 interview. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.